today. You're supposed to have your graphing handbook fully attempted, but that doesn't mean you might not have questions. So I have the handbook right here for us to go over any questions that you have as far as what was it asking, what did it want me to do, all of those sorts of things. So we're going to go over the handbook in just a second, any questions that you guys might have had along the way. What's due tomorrow is worksheet number 1, but if I were you, worksheet number 1 is pretty short. Did you guys check it out, the blue one? Short compared to the yellow one? Okay. I'm going to talk about how only number 1 is due tomorrow, but if you were wise, you would get started on number 2. Tomorrow is going to be mostly a work day on worksheet number 2, making sure you guys understand what's going on, a review of the handbook as well, whatever we don't go over today. And then on Thursday, worksheet number 2 is due, and you have a graphing calculator quiz. Okay? The graphing calculator quiz is going to look kind of like the worksheets, but a lot shorter. And 1 question here, 1 question there. Probably 2 questions on like the blue stuff, and probably 2 to 3 like the yellow stuff as far as information. Now, if you want to be super organized with exactly what's going on, worksheet number 1 is on Graphing Calculator Handbook pages 1 through 6. Worksheet number 1 is on Graphing Calculator Handbook, mostly pages 1 through 6. So we're going to go over the objectives on pages 1 through 6, making sure that you guys figured them out and you don't have any questions, etc., etc., etc. We're going to specifically look at the handbook pages 1 through 6. We're going to peek through the blue worksheet and make sure you guys don't have any questions as far as directions, what's being asked of you, etc., etc. I did hear someone say, it's the calculator stuff, can't we use a pen? Yeah, as long as you don't make any mistakes. Oh. Or you have whiteout. But whiting out on a blue paper is super annoying from experience. And then, tomorrow, our goal is to make sure that you guys are good with the handbook pages 7 through, I do not know how many pages is in your handbook. 7 through the end. 7 through the end, and then work on calculator worksheet number 2. If we can go through the entire handbook today, though, that would be stellar, that would be awesome, and that would be helpful for not only you, but also me as well in preparing you for this quiz. So the goal was to have the handbook fully attempted by today. Some of you are going to get a little bit of grace, so I probably won't collect it today, because we're only going to start going over questions today that you might have on it. Who knows, maybe we're amazing, and maybe I will be able to grade it. We'll see if we run out of time. Here we are. Worksheet number 1. Oh dear, there's stuff written on it. In worksheet number 1, the blue one that you guys have not even attempted yet, the very first question. What's the objective for letter A?
Graph something.
Nope.
What is the value in x equals?
Yeah, value. What should that make your mind recall from the handbook?
The value mode.
Second trace.
Second trace, there is an actual value option in a window. That's true. Or, ooh, you guys don't remember. Let's get into the handbook and let's get up to that value. Okay, objective number 1. How'd you guys do? What did you change in your graph, in your sketch, or in the handbook? Objective number 1.
Oh,
What'd you guys change?
hold on.
Did you make it bold? Did you make it dashed? Did you do that nifty little circle-y do? There's that nifty little circle-y do. Did you change the color? Yeah, you can change the color. Or, sorry, not all calculators can change the color. Here's one that's really, really useful at some point.
Or CE.
Magenta.
Magenta.
This is, oh, wait, this one. Haha.
Magenta.
This is one that's really weird. You probably haven't really used before, but this is going to be super helpful in both pre-calculus and calculus. This little circle with a line, because what it does is it actually traces and it shows you where it is at any point in time. We won't really use it until second semester, but that's a pretty nifty one. But you guys good with changing options, etc.?
Why is there a circle but didn't even draw a line?
Oh, well, that one's, I don't know. That one's kind of fun, but it would be more probably for like gaming purposes, like Pac-Man. If you wanted to actually like program Pac-Man into your graphing calculator, what, you can write games as programs in your calculator? Anyway, you wouldn't want the line following the Pac-Man. You would just want the Pac-Man. It is a lot of work, but I'm just saying it's a thing. Okay, let's get out of that. Lo siento, I think we're good on that objective. Hey, Can you guys make a quick highlight, a quick mark right here with common errors? Because there are so many times during the year that someone puts in a graph that doesn't graph correctly and they're like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
And I have to figure out that they put a minus instead of a negative. You guys got that these are two different buttons, yeah? Very cool.
I think you've gotten these right as well.
Can you guys tell me really quickly, besides the actual buttons themselves, how do they look differently on the screen? Have you tried typing a negative and a minus? Which one's longer?
The minus.
The minus is longer, the negative is shorter.
Minus.
So if someone comes to you with a calculator problem, you have to look and see, are their negatives shorter or are they longer? If they're longer, it will not graph correctly and it will be mad. Cool? Okay. Another thing, can you guys highlight the plot 1, plot 2, plot 3 on instead of off? Like these are all common errors, and these are things that happen multiple times during the year. If you have any of these little guys up here, which is going to be really helpful. Oh, sorry. Oh, I didn't want to keep that one. Hold on. Lo siento. If you have any of these plots turned on, it's a cool shortcut for calculator worksheet number 2. For the yellow worksheet, just to hit enter. Do you see how you can select or deselect these little plot guys? Okay. If any of these plot guys are selected, and if you go to graph something like x plus 2, you might have some serious issues that pop up. Not because you didn't put in your function. Someone might have put in their function just fine. Like, it looks great. I don't understand. It's selected and everything. Why is it mad at me? If one of your plots is turned on and you don't have a, this is from the end of the handbook, and you don't have a list in there, it's like, what are you telling me to do? The plot means to plot these values, but if there are no values in there, it's going to be totally confused. And even worse, if there are values on there, you're going to be graphing stuff that you don't want to graph. So in your calculator, make sure all of these plots are deselected if you're not doing tables, if you're not doing calculator worksheet number 2 stuff, okay? Make sure those plots are always turned off. You can always look and see. There are other ways of turning them on. If you did the handbook, I think you can hit like, what is it, second stat? No.
Second
Stat plot?
Y equals.
Oh, second y equals, thank you. You can turn the stat plots on using this, but there is a shortcut. You can go up and just hit enter, and whatever settings are there, it will plot. But make sure those are turned off, okay? Anything else? I don't think so. Okay, how about objective number 2? What'd you guys notice? Wait, these are the things you were supposed to be doing over the weekend, right? So what'd you put down for objective number 2? It's not there! Why?
Because the window
It died.
Standard. You guys figured out that meant Zoom standard, right? And Zoom standard is a 10 by 10. This is a vertical translation up 13. It's not there. You'd have to change the zoom or the window. And then when you kept going, you changed the window. It's like, oh, hey, there it is. Okay. Number 3. What are the odds that if you graphed this and you tried Zoom standard, it wasn't there or it didn't look like that, and you kept on manipulating, zooming out, manually changing the window, what are the odds you would have gotten this one perfectly? Very slim. So what are other windows that you guys got besides this perfect window? You were like, well, this is what we use, but you probably would have been slow.
What is there?
This is the patio that's like in between Mrs. Pratt and Mrs. Kendrick's office and the Discovery. Well, there could be people in the actual patio. There could be like a facility guy fixing something. Or this is also where the computers are, so someone could just be like stomping their foot. Okay. What else did you guys get for your X-Men, X-Men? Did anybody kind of see that picture without going all crazy and doing it exactly like that?
No.
Oh, come on. If you actually use like a zoom in, zoom out, zoom over feature, what are the odds you would have actually landed there? So slim. Did everybody just look below and think,
Yeah.
okay, who had something else? Yeah, go ahead.
For X-Men, I had -15. I had 20 for X-Max. For Y-Men, I had -600. And for Y-Max, I had 40.
And it probably looks super similar to that, yeah? Should have. Because if you're only off by like 10 or you're off by 100, like you would still see the picture and be like, yeah, it's pretty close. Now the thing that you might not have thought of changing, most of you, if you were just doing it by hand and not like looking below and just being like, SCL even stand for from your guys' search through the handbook? Scale. And what does it mean?
How many are per tick mark?
Yeah, per tick mark, right? So that's 5 and 10 and 15. This is negative 100, negative 200, negative 300, 400, 500. Why is it nice to change the scale if your values are super wide? What if you had kept the scale as 1?
Then level.
You wouldn't have seen anything. It just would have been like a bold line. Like that doesn't help. So it helps to change the scale if you're fitting in lots of values because otherwise it'll be way too hard to count. So do you guys understand, or did you understand what these little interval notations are talking about, right? How left, how right. How left is the same thing as x min. How right is the same thing as x max. How low to how high. You needed to know interval notation just to be able to read this. Okay. So number 3 was a little weird because you could have just stolen the answer from right below, but if you actually had to struggle through, I don't think this is the right window, how do I make it look or how do I manipulate it, this could be really hard because don't most of us just use zoom fit or zoom out?
Zoom out.
In your handbook, does zoom fit always work?
No.
Ooh, there's something coming, right?
It's a failure.
Does zoom out always work? Would it have gotten you here if you just zoomed out, zoomed out, zoomed out, zoomed out?
No.
It would have been so tiny and so squished because the x's really didn't zoom out that much, right? The y's were way different though. So be careful. Zooms are good, but they don't always work. But then it says, okay, there are zooms. Let's talk about zooms. So in number 4, when you're trying to graph this guy, you might have been a little confused as to why it said the 3 different window settings. What were the 3 different window settings? Someone in pre-cal just got super confused. What are the 3? There's this one. This is one. Zoom fit is the second one. It didn't say it, but it said standard, right? Zoom standard is the 3rd one. So we have zoom standard, then zoom fit, and then zoom scale. Did you guys notice that zoom standard and zoom fit both just kind of had like a swoop, there it is, but you had to do the 3rd one to actually see the weirdness?
No.
So the first 2 gave you something, I think, like this. And you were like, okay, what's the big deal? But didn't that 3rd one give you something that was a bit more like that? Right? Because with all of these, it was a super weird window setting where you had to be zoomed in with the y. Now, I'm just reminding you guys of interval notation, of what these actually mean and what they're actually saying. And other years we've done this before all of our chapter 1 notes, so then they had to know what the E was, etc. But careful. Zoom standard, zoom fit gave a wrong graph, or at least not a full, complete graph because of the big settings. But do you guys notice the function? What was weird about them? Yeah, look at those coefficients. They're tiny, right? That should have given you a hint that these y's should have some sort of tiny window. What was next? Now we got into tables. How do you find a value? Hey, we're back to worksheet number 1, right? How do we find a value without the second trace menu? How do we find a value given a table? Because that was asked of you somewhere in this table section. Can you find it? Second window?
Yeah, because then that gets you to the table.
I thought second graph got you to the table. Oh, table setup. Oh, you're talking about table setup, right, Jaden?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't know.
I was looking for objective number 5. Doesn't this say what is the value and you're using a table? How'd you guys do this one? Wait a minute. How'd you do this one at all? There was no equation. What are we using? Weren't we using the exact same one that you just ended with, but you couldn't just look at the objective? Did any of you guys just jump from objective to objective and you got here and you got stuck? Because it doesn't tell you in the box what you're supposed to have in your calculator, right? You needed to go back and you needed to read and look and say, oh, hey, they left this guy thrown in. Now, once you have this guy thrown in, how did you get 0.9 to show up in your table? Because if I go to my table right now and I do second graph, I don't have 0.9. So how do we change that? Now, Jaden, go.
Second window.
Cool. Now what?
Go to table with the triangle.
good. This is actually a Greek letter called delta, and it means change in, like delta y over delta x. So delta table means change in the table. So what is your table changing by? What is it changing by right now, guys? Ones. But what do I want it to go by in order to get to 0.9? I could go straight to 0.9. I could be super snazzy like that and be like, go by 0.9. So 0.9, then 1.8, then 2.7, then 3.6. Just a hint, I do not have the right function in my calculator, so ignore the actual values. But you could have gone by 0.9s. Couldn't you also have gone by 0.1s? Oops, nope. I want to start at 0. You could have also gone by 0.1s instead of 0.9s. You would have had to scroll just a little bit. Did anybody notice, though, that when you bring this up, there's a shortcut that the handbook doesn't tell you about? Did anybody notice that? The shortcut says in your table, depending on how new your calculator is, you can actually just hit the plus, and you can change it from here and not have to go to that setting, which is kind of snazzy. It's kind of cool. There's some hidden things the handbook doesn't tell you about. You can change by whatever you want to change by without going to second window. However, there is another kind of cool way that's going to be helpful multiple times this year. Did anybody go to did your actual handbook make you go to ask at all, guys?
What's ask?
Ooh, good question. Now, you're never going to want to do ask for dependent because you need the dependent to automatically be found from the independent. We need the y's to be found from the x's. We need that to be automatic. But the independent, the x's to be ask instead of auto, it's kind of snazzy because you can ask for whatever you want. So you can ask for 1.9, you can ask for 22, you can ask for 10.7, and not have to scroll in an annoying table to get there. So that's pretty snazzy if you're trying to find multiple values given one function and you want to do it quickly. This is technically faster than using the graph. Except and just hit delete if you ever want to get rid of them all. But you can figure out or find whatever they want, and it's super helpful, especially when they're not evenly spaced. Because if they're not evenly spaced, using this whole delta table is going to be super annoying. But if the automatic generated is helpful, then go back to automatic, and then you can have it go by whatever you want it to go by. Is that kind of cool? Or at least does it make sense?
Yeah.
So that's talking about the table. Beep, beep. All of this is talking about the table setup menu and how to manipulate it. Hopefully you guys figured out the final answer was, well, technically negative 0.0008, but it was in scientific notation. Did I say enough zeros? 0.0008. So whenever you see your calculator with an E and a negative, now remember, Laurel, was it you on Thursday? No, maybe it was someone last week. Where, Emily, I think it was you. Your calculator was saying like E to the 10th, negative 10th or something, and I was like, it's trying to say 0, and it's not. It's not always trying to say 0. Like it could be actually saying a value. So just kind of keep an eye on that. But do you see? If I were you, I'd highlight it. See, this is exactly what I said. When they say something like E to the negative 12, it really should be considered 0. Your calculator did the best it could, got as close as it could, and then it kind of gave up. So scientific notation, it is a thing. There are values that need scientific notation, but there are also times if your calculator is saying like E to the negative 10, E to the negative 12, E to the negative 15, it means 0. It did the best it could. So kind of see the difference there. We're pretty close to the second trace menu. Did anybody get confused by objective number 6? It was a weird one. It said, hey, read all the stuff below and then give me values and zeros and minimums and maximums. Values were asked in number 7. Number 7 said, hey, give me some values using the second trace button. So actually, we can cross off value, but guys, were there any other objectives that asked later on for zeros or minimums or maximums? So you were supposed to find me the 0, find me the min, and find me the max. Maybe you got a little confused because there was an objective that said points of intersection, I think, somewhere further. But you were supposed to read through, yes, do the values, but read through the rest about how to do zeros, mins, and max, and then come back and say, oh, hey, I can find the zeros now. I can find the min, and I can find the max. Now, wait, are these intervals or are these points?
Those are points.
Yeah, because a minimum, right, is 1x, 1y. A maximum is 1x, 1y. It's all about the context. Sophia.
So I put no minimum because I thought it meant like the actual minimum.
Oh, got it. When it said, oh, it didn't actually say it. I apologize. It kind of says right here, but then it changes to the zeros. It would have been better to say the zeros and later on this year we're going to learn a distinction between an absolute minimum versus a relative minimum. There is a min at this point and a max at this point, but it's not the min of the whole thing. So if you want, you could put a little be like, okay, the min is none. And actually, the max is none also, right?
Yeah.
Because it's going to keep going. So the graph goes higher, goes lower, but there is a minimum for like the region around it locally, and there is a maximum. It's called relative extrema because it's relative to the area. So that was actually a great thing that you noticed, but we can still find a min and max. Jaden.
So since you showed 4 figures, do you always want to show in 4 figures?
I always do to the tens, hundreds, thousands place. Always 3 decimal places because of how AP Calculus, the AP exam is.
Okay.
But the book, I think, tends to go 2 unless it shows otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah, but I always go 3. You guys can check your answers on Objective 6, Objective 7. As far as, and some of you are like, ooh, I need to actually still do 6. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. That's another reason I'm not grading right this second. Some of them were a little bit weird. But then you guys got to points of intersection, which I only found 1, but if you found the first one, you should have found the other 2 just fine. And hopefully we don't have any, like mine was off by a little bit of decimal places because these should be precise because you're using the calculator, yes first, yes second, yes, but then you're hitting enter and letting the calculator go all the way. So I have the first one, but there should be 2 more. Use that guess feature to get you there. This is being recorded, so if you guys need to see those answers and double check what went wrong, you can check that later. Now guys, I'm pausing at this list one because if you're looking at calculator worksheet number 1, what are the words that you guys see for those directions? There's value, there's zeros, I think it talks about intersections, maximum, minimum. Do you see why I said this is the handbook, pages 1 through 6? Right? There's something to do either in the table or in the graph. You can do table or, you should use the graph for that one. Intersection points, we just talked about the zeros, the value, points of intersection. So you're going to have to play with your window maybe, but these numbers aren't huge. They're not like crazy far. They're just I'm trying to in this worksheet make sure that you understand handbook pages 1 through 6. Does that make sense? So what comes after handbook page 6? Can you just peek at the yellow worksheet? It's a lot longer. My advice is that you start it tonight, but you don't technically need to finish it. We're going to be working on it tomorrow in class a bit too, and going over handbook questions. But what's super different between how you're given information here and how you're given information here?
The writing is bigger on a blue page.
Well, that's true. But I also made it fill the space better. Besides the writing being bigger on the blue page.
There's graphs or tables.
These ones have tables. And if you look closely, are there any equations on this page at all? I mean, there's a space for equations, right? Y equals with a blank and y equals for a blank, but are there any equations at all? So here's the struggle. This one, can't we put stuff into the y equals 9? This one, we can't. So check it out. What did you find in the second half of your handbook?
List.
Yeah. Now, they're giving you in this one with the stow feature, it's kind of like a really annoying way to do it, but it could be a nice way. Can anybody tell me when it might be helpful to stow into a list or to put numbers into a list this way instead of just going there and typing it? Yeah, Sophie.
Like if you have to do math, with writing.
Maybe if you need to do math. But even then, you would probably write it down so it wouldn't necessarily, I don't know if it make it be.
Easier because then you don't have to find the table.
What do you mean? I think I agree. Maybe, okay, so maybe you can do this from the home screen, but I mean, you have to figure out what the arrow is, and that's this little stow button. You have to figure out these little braces, which I think are like second sevens or something, what are they, second parentheses. So it's kind of annoying. Can you guys look at these numbers real quick? Do you realize there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but there's like 7 ones or 6 ones you can see at a time? What if you do all this work and you want to double check that you put it in right?
Right.
Wouldn't you have to like scroll up and scroll down and like compare them?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, what could you do here?
With what?
Couldn't you look at like one or two lines and have all the data? Does that make sense? So in this one, you would have to scroll up, scroll down, make sure that you put everything in, compare each and every one. This one, you can look at the entire table in one shot, because you could have kept it going from line to line to line to line to line and filled in as many data points as you need into the X's and then into the Y's. Wait a minute, X's and Y's. Do you guys see X's and Y's? I see year and population and time and height. Who's X and who's Y? How are we going to do that?
X is on side, Y is right side.
Usually X is going to be the left, and usually X is going to be the top. But yeah, you can also think of independent and dependent. Like for instance, on number 1, can you guys tell which variable is the independent one?
Y.
X. There's no X though. Don't you see T's? I see T's. T is 0, T is 5. It's actually going to be Y equals for population, and then T, time, is like your X. And that's kind of common, because time just kind of keeps on ticking. There's a song, I think, but I know it's a phrase. But time is almost always X if it's like a word problem. Oh, there is an X and Y in number 5. I'm sorry, there was one. So, do you have to do it this way ever? No. There could be a way with lots of complicated numbers to double check in like one fail swoop, just looking at a screen to double check that you put them all in, right? But guys, once you get into your list, don't you then need to know how to use it, right? So maybe how to graph it with a stat plot, maybe how to do something called a regression, because in a lot of this homework, putting in a table is one of the easiest things. How to use it, like how to get an equation and then use that equation is where. So what do I hope for tomorrow? I hope that you've worked through the entire handbook if you didn't and met all the 1 through 20 objectives. I hope that you've done calculator worksheet number 1 entirely, and then I hope that you've at least looked at this guy because he's hard, and we're going to try and work